Hey, what's up everyone? Capcom quietly rolled out a new Steam-only performance update. And this one is less about shiny new features and way more about how the game actually runs when you're out there hunting, exploring, and pushing your system. A lot of PC players had been reporting that something just felt off. Frame rates would dip for no obvious reason, CPU usage would spike randomly, and some setups that should have been running the game smoothly were struggling more than expected. What makes this update interesting is that Capcom clearly zeroed in on PC-specific behavior, especially things that don't show up the same way on console. This wasn't a balance pass or a content tweak. This was a behind-the-scenes cleanup aimed at stability and consistency. And that alone already tells us how seriously they're taking PC feedback. One of the biggest changes here is how the game handles processing load in the background. Before this patch, a lot of work was happening outside of moments where you'd expect it, particularly related to shaders. Even after you'd already gone through shader compilation, the game was still doing extra shader-related tasks while you were playing. That translated into micro stutters, sudden CPU spikes, and those annoying moments where performance would tank even though nothing intense was happening on screen. With this update, that background workload has been significantly reduced, which means your CPU isn't being slammed for no good reason while you're just moving through the world or engaging smaller monsters. Another huge improvement comes from how textures are handled, especially if you're using high-resolution textures. Previously, VRAM usage could get pretty aggressive, especially on GPUs with more limited memory. Even players with strong cards noticed that VRAM would fill up fast, leading to hitching or inconsistent frame pacing. Capcom adjusted texture streaming behavior here, making it more efficient and better balanced. The end result is that textures load more intelligently, VRAM usage is lower overall, and visual quality stays intact without putting unnecessary pressure on your GPU. For a lot of people, this alone can mean smoother gameplay over longer sessions without performance slowly degrading. There was also a very specific Steam-related issue that's been floating around in the community for a while, where background checks tied to downloadable content were running more often than they should. In some cases, players with all DLC installed were actually seeing worse performance because the game was repeatedly checking that content in the background. That's the kind of thing you'd never notice directly, but it absolutely eats CPU cycles. This update addresses that behavior, reducing how often those checks occur and minimizing their impact on overall performance. For some users, especially those with mid-range CPUs, this change can feel massive. What's nice about this patch is that it doesn't require you to change how you play or tweak a bunch of settings to feel the benefits. You install it, boot the game, and things just feel steadier. Frame times are more consistent, CPU usage is calmer, and the game feels less prone to random slowdowns. It's the kind of update that doesn't scream at you with obvious changes, but after an hour or two of play, you realize you're not fighting your system anymore. It's also worth pointing out that this update only targets the Steam version, which explains why Capcom pushed it out separately instead of bundling it with a larger title update. PC environments are wildly different from one another, and optimizations like this take time to identify and refine. The fact that Capcom isolated these issues and rolled out a focused fix says a lot about their long-term plans for the game on PC. From a broader perspective, this patch feels like groundwork. It smooths out existing rough edges so future updates don't stack new features on top of shaky performance. When a game is already pushing hardware with large environments, complex monsters, and dynamic systems, efficiency matters just as much as raw power. By cleaning up CPU overhead, shader behavior, and VRAM usage now, Capcom is setting the stage for more ambitious updates down the line without compromising stability. If you've been on the fence about performance or felt like your system wasn't being fully respected before, this update is a strong step in the right direction. It won't magically turn low-end hardware into a powerhouse, but it does make sure that the resources you have are being used more intelligently. And honestly, that's exactly what a good performance update should do.